I've always been a people person, right? Since I was a kid. People say, am I worried about my job? No, I actually think I'm going to be doing more. The more I meet, particularly the younger people who might have, gone through university during COVID and everything's been remote, they are lacking those social skills. Yeah. Some simple things like keeping eye contact, all those things, human things. And even if AI is generating great ideas, we're going to need to have to communicate them to each other. So I think more than ever, investing in human skills or soft skills is vital, and great leaders listen more than they talk. Let's say you have 10 goals as opposed to 3 goals, and you manage to achieve half of them, right? Yeah. Human beings doing human beings will focus on the 5 they didn't achieve. Yes. Yeah, because we all look for the negative before the positive. Whereas if you only have 3 and you achieve all 3 of them, right, you're set up for success.
Welcome to this week's episode of Akoni Tech Talks. Faris, it's a pleasure to have you here today.
Thanks for having me, Francesca. It's a pleasure to be here.
Faris, we're going to get straight into it like we do with all episodes. Now, tell us a little bit about what inspired you to start Shiageto Consulting.
Yeah. I was, there's a couple of factors, but the main reason was I'd been a strategy consultant before. I was a partner in a strategy consulting firm, and I've been consulting for 12 years, and basically a big brain for hire. That's not my words. But what I mean by that is people would outsource their strategy to us. And when you design somebody else's strategy, it turns out they don't actually end up doing it. Right, because they've outsourced it. There's a whole bunch of reasons that when you hand it over, they'll go, "Oh, I don't really believe in that. I'm not really." So it's such a waste of effort many times. But at the same time, I realised I was really good at fixing all those reasons they might not accept an idea. Yeah. And that sort of inspired me to set up a business just to do that. Get people engaged, excited around strategy, get them aligned, get teams working better together. And that is effectively the ethos of Shiageto and why I set it up. I saw a gap in the market, I saw my skills, they overlaid, and I was like, willing to take a risk, let's do it.
And how did you kind of shape or use your career experience to form the approach for the business?
Yeah, so it's a bit like I met Joe Wicks recently, and he said everyone thinks I was an overnight success, but I'm a 20-year overnight success. And I often think my career is the same, right? I have such a varied career. I started as a school teacher, I then worked for a big oil and gas company, I then became a consultant, and it's sort of putting all those elements together without knowing it. That brought together the ethos of Shiageto, which is fundamentally 3 principles. Is you need to have IQ to be successful in anything. That's a great quality idea. That came from my strategy consulting days. You need EQ, the ability to get other people excited by your idea. That certainly came from my school teacher days. You got to get kids excited in what they're studying. And then the FQ, the focus quotient, that came from working in a big corporate. Right, you only are successful if you really focus and really deliver stuff. So yeah, it's a 20-year career packaged into one company.
Yeah, and you say on your site you have a passion for sorting out the people issues that stop great ideas from being successfully delivered. Oh, yeah. So where did that passion come from? How did that sort of start?
I've always been a people person, right? Since I was a kid. Looking back when I was a kid, I was passionate about people to fit in. Right? I really wanted to understand people. I really wanted to be everyone's friend. And to do that, I was sort of observing people, learning stuff. So I've always been, my default setting, and you and I were talking earlier, is go and meet more people rather than less. Right? People always say, "Are you an introvert, an extrovert?" I'm like, who cares, right? I'll be out there meeting more people, and so I'm always. But people are fascinating. Right? They'll tell you, it's the classic British, "How are you doing?" Yes. People don't really reply, but they do tell you still, right? And so it's that really pushing through and trying to discover.
And tell us about the formula: success equals IQ times EQ times FQ, and how do you apply that to help businesses achieve their strategies?
Yeah, well, I kind of trailed it earlier, but let's just unpack it a little bit. So, but you can first of all, you can tell I used to be a maths teacher. I love an equation, even if it makes no mathematical sense whatsoever. But what it's saying is, if you want to be successful at anything in life, and we're talking about companies or personally, right, you've got to have an objective first of all. Right? If you don't, let's spend some time there. What do you want to achieve? So, but then to get there, you need those three components. So the IQ is, how am I going to get there? What's the best single way to get me there, right? And often people don't pick the best way. They pick the first way. They pick the way they've done before, right? And it's the same in companies. So we really go in and say, look, no, let's up your levels. When we call it IQ, it's not Mensa IQ. But let's up the quality of your thinking. Get more out of your team. Really test it. So that's the first component. Once you've got that, though, unless you're going to travel alone, you need to take others on the journey with you. And we all know it, right? When you tell somebody else your idea, they go, oh yeah, it's really interesting. They couldn't care less, right? So the EQ is all about, how do I get other people engaged, excited, talk to them in their language and how they liked it. So, and if you're not doing that, we help companies engage their own workforce, engage their employee, their customers. So it's that, being able to flex your style and really take others on the journey. But that's still not enough. You can have a great idea, you can have other people on board, and what I realised was the missing component was that focus. Okay, you've got to be set up to be dedicated and focused on what you said is important. Right, too many companies, too many people are doing too many things at the same time, right? And all that does is dilute your effectiveness. So really prioritising, really removing barriers in your way to your goal is that third component. So we always say you've got to have all three, because a lot of companies say, don't worry, we've got lots of high IQ. I'm like, no, it's a multiply, not an add, right? So you need all three.
It's interesting you say that about that kind of, businesses have got so many things going on at once, as do we as people.
Okay,
So if that dilutes the approach to success, do you feel that because we're always trying to juggle so many things as individuals and businesses, that it dilutes us emotionally as well?
Yeah, of course it does, right? If you have, let's say you have 10 goals as opposed to 3 goals, and you manage to achieve half of them, right?
Yeah.
Human beings doing human beings will focus on the 5 they didn't achieve.
Yes.
Yeah, because we all look for the negative before the positive. Whereas if you only have 3 and you achieve all 3 of them, right, you're set up for success, right? Yeah. So it of course, and that's just the success or failure emotions. There's the struggle emotions along the way.
Yeah.
Right? If you're doing 10 things that are difficult, you're going to have 10 times the amount of then consolidating in one. So these things are interlinked. I'll give you a great example. None of my clients, it's not like they don't know they should do less.
Yeah.
They know academically they should do less.
Yeah.
Right? They just find it hard to let go. Because, I went into a client and I said to them, it was just a 40-person business. I said, just show me all the strategic projects you're doing. And they had 150. Right, that's more than 3 per person, and this is on top of business as usual.
Yeah.
And I said that's bonkers. And the C-suite all went, yeah, we know it's bonkers. And I said, so why aren't you getting rid of them? And they were like, they went through each of the 150. I said, well, that was the CEO's one, and that one we have to do for regulatory reasons, and that one. So everything had a logical reason, but you're like, you need to let go. So it was actually helping them deal with the emotional side of letting go that we were the most impactful, not the academic.
Right.
You need to do that.
What would you say are some of the most common roadblocks then you've seen in businesses when it comes to sort of aligning them with their strategy?
So there is that prioritization,
yeah,
right? And you ask a group of 8 individuals or whatever, they'll each have a different view on that prioritization. But it's that they're doing too much. The second is they don't talk enough, right? They don't share what they think about it. And that can happen for lots of reasons. Many companies we go into, there's a hierarchical culture. And it might not be overt, but the boss is always being dictated. So people just stop sharing their actual opinions and ideas until it comes to the crunch, and then it's kind of like released. And you're like, if only people talked about this earlier. So I always say, and the key to that is get to know your people more, right? It's easy to know the people around you, but what about the other departments? As you grow, it's easy to lose touch. And then the other thing is what we touched on before, is people tend to do the first idea that pops into their head, and that's not always the best idea.
Yeah. And in your experience, how do global companies like Amazon or Heineken approach a strategy alignment and team engagement different to smaller firms?
So we do work with large companies like Amazon and Heineken, as well as startups, and it's really interesting. In the larger companies, they've already got a culture, and they've got I always say it's a bit like trying to turn the Titanic, right, or a big steam. You've got to overlay on these cultural challenges, and it could be this hierarchical thing, or it could be the opposite. They consult too much, right, and nobody's willing to make a decision. So each company has its own unique thing, but you have to navigate those waters.
Yeah.
Whereas in the smaller firms, it's usually much better culture. Everyone is mates, right? So everyone is a bit more open, a bit more transparent. And they're much more proactive. So you agree something on a morning, by the afternoon they're doing it, which would never be found in a big corporate. It has to go through loads of layers. But it doesn't mean they don't face their challenges, right? Sometimes they're too close to each other to really actively challenge each other. Or sometimes, as we said, they don't see that in a small company they really need to rationalise. They don't have the arms and legs of a big Amazon. So each of those has a different challenge, and that's what we love, because you can take ideas from one and plant it in the other.
And when it comes to finding those best practices to kind of make sure everyone's aligned and understanding the businesses, what kind of tools would you suggest, or what kind of typical qualities do you like to arm the teams with? Yeah,
do you know what? Some of the stuff we do is the most basic.
Yeah.
Right? I'll say to senior people, 99% of what I'm going to tell you, you already know. You're just not doing. Right? It's a bit like we all know we should eat healthier, we should sleep more. We just don't do it, right? So what we do is we have very practical tools and fun ways. This is where my teaching experience comes in. I gamify everything. I make it all fun and simple.
Nice.
And the single biggest thing, one of the biggest things we do is break down those barriers, build trust really quickly. So we'll often have teams doing really simple exercises to get to know each other.
Yeah.
Yeah. Have you ever heard of the randomized taxi experiment?
No,
you've not heard this. So they had a company, which they had a big company away day.
Yeah.
And in this company they had different departments who didn't really talk to each other. So after the away day, they said to the people, "We've booked you taxis back to the airport,
right?
And we've just allocated them randomly. So you're going to be in a taxi with 3 other people." But they hadn't allocated them randomly. They'd purposely done half the group, they put them in with 3 people that they had never spoken to from different departments. The other half they put them with people in their teams.
Yeah.
And then they monitored them for the next 6 months to see how these people progressed and what connections they were forming after just that sort of 15-minute taxi journey. And all the people who'd had a random taxi journey accelerated through their career quicker, were much more comfortable just ringing in a different department going, "Oh, well, I know John, I shared a taxi with him once," right? So that simple act of some way of breaking the ice, right? So often we go into companies to do random coffee generators, right? We do silly games like you've got 5 minutes to find the most exciting fact that connects the 4 of you, right? We're forcing people to quickly go through those barriers because it just makes it easier to have a more difficult conversation later on when you do that. Yeah,
it's interesting because the kind of examples you've given as well are all about people coming together and sort of being physically together. Thinking about the way tech has evolved, there's Zooms, there's Teams, there's Google Meets. Do you think that presents a barrier with us building relationships with clients and people?
A tool is just a tool, right? It has benefits and it has things. It's how you use it, right? And the problem that I see persistently is people are unwilling to start again and learn how to use the tool, because I know companies that are fully remote and they have an amazing culture. Everyone knows, but it takes a different style of leadership and management. So we often go in and teach people how to do that. So take a classic example. If you've got junior people in your firm, they learn just as much from the casual side conversations, as they do from formal training. But in a virtual world, they miss that. So one of the things we teach all leaders and managers is, if you've got a virtual meeting, finish it 5 minutes early. Right? If it's half an hour, finish it 25 minutes. If it's an hour, finish it 50. And invest that 5 minutes. You, as the leader, ring that most junior person and just go, "Do you have any questions from that?" Right? That 5 minutes is invaluable, and it recreates that stuff. But people wouldn't think that. They would just, if they got 5 minutes back to themselves, they go, "Oh, I'll go make a cup of tea. I'll go and chill a bit before my next call." But actually, intentionality is a big factor.
So we've kind of touched on it. That segues onto how can people use digital platforms to sort of facilitate better communication and engagement between leaders and their teams? Is there anything else you would suggest?
Oh, amazing stuff, right? Use all the stuff, right? Use the AI summaries to really enhance your communication. I use metrics coming out of all these things. So I actually show leaders, particularly leaders who are overbearing, I say to them, how much do you think you spoke in that meeting? And they'll go, oh, well, 15% of the time. I said, well, let's look at the stats. You actually spoke for 60% of the time. How do you feel about it? Right? Show them that. Show how many times they said no. Right? So it's a really great way of highlighting behaviours. And if you're really smart, you can then use that, flip it, and say, I can use the timers. You can actually use AI to prompt you when you're speaking too much. Right?
Wow.
There's lots of things now if you want to, because great teams have great leaders listen more than they talk.
Yeah.
Right. And you get everyone's opinion, not the same two people's opinion.
Yeah.
So that.
Yeah, that kind of segues nicely onto as well. Do you think training in soft skills like negotiation and communication are more important than ever before in this age of AI?
100%. People say, am I worried about my job? No, I actually think I'm going to be doing more. The more I meet, particularly the younger people who might have, gone through university during COVID and everything's been remote, they are lacking those social skills.
Yeah.
Some of the simple things like keeping eye contact, all those things, human things. And even if AI is generating great ideas, we're going to need to have to communicate them to each other. So I think more than ever, investing in human skills or soft skills is vital and will be a real differentiator for people in business.
Yeah, absolutely. And you've touched on some really nice examples, but how can tech-based gamification improve employee engagement and make learning more enjoyable?
Any gamification makes everything more enjoyable. It's the number one thing I learned. I still use many of the games that I used to use with kids. Bingo, stand up, sit down, run to the board. You can literally turn everything into a game, right? Using technology or not, right? So don't, and I always tell people, don't crowbar a complex, right? Some of the most simple games, we've been playing some games for thousands of years as a human being. Rock, paper, scissors, stone has been because it's such a good game, right? It doesn't need reinventing, adding technology on top. So so don't obsess about having to use technology. Can be the conduit that you deliver it through. But of course, there are fantastic tech solutions, and it always makes me laugh when someone is pitching a new tech solution to me. And I'll be like, I can just do this with a piece of string. But obviously it has there are some great solutions out there.
Yeah, it's interesting because, like you say, there's so much tech out there, and I feel this has been a really interesting discussion so far because there is a fear around the way tech is progressing, and I know, like we've touched on, people are nervous about it potentially taking jobs because there will be instances where it does, but we've talked about so many positive ways to utilize tech, and even examples that I hadn't thought about, which I think is really wonderful, that using it to our advantage, using it as a tool to aid us rather than replace, human connection and emotion. But why do you think there is such a fear, or that initial first instinct when people say, oh, let's use tech for this, that there's a bit of a negative reaction to it?
Human beings hate change. Well, we don't. We love change when it's a new iPhone or get something that we like for Christmas. We hate change when we're like, I have to change my hair. So anything new, and you can read a lot about psychology and anthropology. It goes back to those caveman days. If it's something I don't know, I look at it warily. I don't look at it positively. It might be a tiger as opposed to. So I think that is innate, but it's also you can't control everybody to only use the positives of something. You give the same tech to two people. Unfortunately, one person will use it for good, and one person will use it for to bombard you with lots of emails that you don't want. And so that's the thing. And so people are wary of that, really. But I always say a tool is a tool. So judge the person who is steering the tool. Before you judge whether the tool is negative or positive, right? Because I've seen the same tools used in terrible ways, but in amazing ways, right? And that's the beauty. And you made me think of going back to the previous question, but kind of linking to this. I met someone recently at a networking event, at a startup event, and he'd just raised, £10 million for his startup, which was automating relationships. right? And he described this app he'd built, which is, let's say you and I are friends, and what the app will do is it will go onto all your social media, and every night will produce a report saying this is what's happened in Francesca's life.
Oh, wow.
Right, kind of a summary, like a newspaper about you, and they'll say, oh, and we've noticed from today's report that she's feeling a bit blue. Would you like us to send her some flowers on your behalf?
Wow.
Right. So he was like, this is amazing, and I said, but at what point does Francesca stop being your friend and just becomes the computer's friend? If you're not actively involved in anything, you don't send the flowers, you don't write the card, years can go by. And he seemed really proud of this, and he said, well, then I can invest it on the real relationships I have. And I'm like, so, but then why keep them as a relationship, right? I was just amazed at where people's minds go. Just because we can do with technology doesn't mean we should do with technology.
Yeah. It kind of makes me think as well about, obviously, when things like Facebook, Twitter, or X now, should I say, first kind of came out, and everyone was super excited about all these platforms. And like you say, the majority use it for good, but there is a large percentage out there now, or a growing percentage of people that use these platforms in ways they shouldn't, or it kind of promotes, like there's an online bullying culture as well. It's very evident in the celebrity world as well. People think just because I kind of see you online, I can say stuff about you. One of the things we've kind of talked about on previous episodes is that no one sort of anticipated it going this way. Everyone was kind of very...
Are you sure about that?
Yeah, I'm interested to hear.
Because one of the key tool that I use with all clients is something called a pre-mortem.
Right.
Have you ever heard of a pre-mortem?
No.
So pre-mortem is you take any idea, and it could be a product, it could be a strategy, it could be a new thing you're inventing, and you assume it has failed.
Right.
Right? Your starting premise is this has failed. It's not just failed, it's failed miserably. And so now let's spend an hour generating all the reasons why it failed. So we usually use it to stress test an idea.
Yeah.
But in a similar way, you could slap up Facebook and say, let's imagine this is used for evil. Let's generate all the ways for the next hour how this could be used for evil.
Yeah.
Right? And this tool is fantastic because it allows you to start seeing some of your blind spots.
Yeah.
Because everyone always gravitates to, it will speed. Yeah, but what if it gets in the hand of an email marketer and he just sort of splatters everyone? And I'm being harsh on email marketing here, right? But it also allows your wider team, those people who are negative or have been holding back, maybe not challenging the boss because they're the boss.
Yeah.
If it's introduced correctly, it's saying, actually, now is the time, we actually value you. We want you at the front. So you unpack all the resistance to your idea. Yeah. What a great hour, right? Because then you flip it around the next half hour and you say, okay, what are the 3 things we're most worried about? How do we make sure those never happen? So when people say we didn't anticipate it, I'm sure somebody did think through some of the, let's imagine this fell into the hands of not nice people. Yeah. But I'm assuming they made a decision, do you know what, the benefits outweigh the negatives, or something along the lines. Yeah.
Do you think if you were to sort of do a pre-mortem, was it, of AI?
Yeah.
What do you think, the way it's kind of evolving, do you think there will be ways it's kind of used for?
Of course, it's already being used for bad stuff, both in the dark web, but also some of the global conflicts we're seeing at the moment. They're talking about how AI is. So of course, and that's why, for all the free market capitalists out there, and I'm one of them, you need regulation. You need a set of rules. People won't abide by them. It's just like, we haven't clamped out all speeding by having speed limits, but at least you limit the number of people who do push the boundaries. So, you can never stop all the negative impacts of anything. Yeah. And sometimes they're unintended.
Yeah. Exactly. Well, we've kind of gone on a nice little journey there. No, I love that. But when it comes to techniques that can sort of simplify complex problems within businesses with technology, what kind of methods would you suggest?
Well, I mean, before you build any tech or use any tech, simplify your thoughts. Yeah. Right? Because you put junk in, you get junk out. So really spend time. There's an old quote by Albert Einstein that I use with all my clients, which he once said, look, if I only had an hour to save the world, I'd spend 55 minutes working out what the hell the problem is, because then it's really easy.
Yeah.
But he said, and then the second part was, too many people spend 55 minutes just doing stuff or building stuff or going, oh my God. It's that really declutter your idea, simplify it, go further than you think before you put it into AI, before you overlay tech on it. And if you can't get there, don't start using tech.
And we talked about hierarchical issues and when it comes to the kind of using tech to solve those problems, we touched on there being resistance sometimes as well, particularly with key stakeholders or senior members within the team. How would you say businesses can effectively engage those key stakeholders to embrace tech and change?
So first of all, it's down to both parties, right? They've got to be a willingness. But let's take AI. Go back to AI, for example. So I go into a lot of boardrooms, and AI is on everyone's lips.
Yeah.
But then you actually turn around to these senior leaders and say, how many of you actually used AI? And they look at you like, no, I'm aware of it and my team know how to use it. You're like, but no, have you actually? No, okay. Yeah. So what I started to do with teams is, let's say we're doing a brainstorming session or a pre-mortem, and there's 8 of them. I'll say, right, for the next hour, John, instead of your ideas, you are the person manning ChatGPT.
Yeah.
So you've actually got to use it in a safe environment. And then next session, we'll switch. Person B is going to use ChatGPT. Yeah. So at the end of a 4-week period, everyone has used it. And it's like, oh yeah, I've learned how to, so actually create, particularly for senior people, because it's just as scary for them to learn a new technology and learn a new skill. So create the space and with safe environment for them to have a go. Yeah. And you'll be amazed. Yeah. Go, oh, I didn't realise I could do this. I didn't. Yeah. They don't have to be experts.
Yeah. This moves us on nicely to the trending in tech round.
Okay.
So there was an article in CEO magazine this week which was saying that as AI kind of transforms our work lives by automating those mundane tasks, it gives us an opportunity to gain valuable time to focus on what matters most, which is the people.
Yes.
So this shift, they're saying, kind of calls for a renewed emphasis on emotional intelligence in leadership, which can boost workplace relationships and team performance, which we're all about. Yeah. So research shows that 76% of employers who experienced empathy from their leaders reported higher levels of engagement in their work, compared to 32% with those who were kind of less empathetic. But the article was saying people aren't perfect, but neither is AI. So if we recognize and lean into the strengths of both, it will equal productivity, innovation within the team. But what are some ways you would leverage AI to kind of help your team or your clients?
Okay. And what I love about those surveys, it always make me laugh when you go, oh, we'll get these time savings, therefore human beings will be better. Human beings have shown time and time again, when they get time back, think back to the invention of the washing machine, and you don't have to. They have not used it to then go on. They've used it to then scroll on Instagram, right? They've then used it to which is fine, right? Yeah. But we never quite get the productivity. Anyway, what I think AI is fantastic. Like I said, we are now no longer alone. What I mean by that, I was a solo founder. Doesn't mean I don't now, and now I have a team, but in the early days, when I meet solo people, I say, thanks to ChatGPT, you've got a team. Yeah. You've got somebody to bounce ideas off. Yeah. I've seen some amazing uses of AI where talking about empathy. Yeah. Go and have a conversation with it, right? Go and test. Say you need to go and give feedback to a member of your team. Yeah. Go and try it on ChatGPT first and see what ChatGPT says. Goes, well, that's a bit harsh, because it can actually do that now, and it's scary. So use it as a sparring partner, a thought partner to test ideas before not a replacement to other human beings, but as a first draft, right? Yeah. So I think there's loads of little ways that people don't even think about that they can use AI as a buddy in their pocket, a kind of a digital concierge, a Jimmy Cricket. Yeah.
Are there any things that you think we should be more aware of or kind of take into account as tech moves forward and we want to hold on to that personal time, those kind of intimate relationships with people? Because I even find, for example, in some situations now where I'm making a conscious effort to kind of talk to a friend, if I'm texting them about something, there's that lost in translation element even over text.
Yeah.
So do you think there's anything we should just make sure we don't lose, that we're very consciously aware of?
Yeah, 100%. So everything is about balance, right? So Jimmy Cricket is great to have in your pocket, but if he turns out to be the only person you ever talk to in your life, then you've gone too far.
Yeah.
And I always say it's about engaging. It's what's called system 2 thinking, stopping and thinking, hang on a minute, am I doing the right thing? So, going back to your texting me, I often stop myself when I'm doing something. I say, what would either a better version of me do right now, or what would my nemesis do if they wanted to outdo me?
Okay,
right? And in that situation, what would my nemesis do? They just pick up the phone and ring your friend.
Yeah.
Right? And when you get that idea, just do that.
Yeah.
Right? What would be more human at this point? What would be, and because otherwise we'll start to forget those skills.
Yeah.
We'll start to get lazy.
Yeah.
And we need to reverse that slide sometimes.
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the things that the article was also touching on, like you've just touched on then, about being intentional and taking the time to connect on a personal level, which is a lot easier by doing it on the phone rather than over a text message. But what are some ways you would kind of recommend to a business that was sort of looking for ways to make a conscious effort to show appreciation to the team? Because it does often kind
to
of
the team.
go unnoticed.
Teams, any human beings, right?
Yeah.
First of all, apply that mantra. What would be?
Yeah.
But the best way is. Yeah, I often talk to people about the difference between the platinum rule and golden rule. Have you?
No.
Do you know? You might know the golden rule. You
Right.
were maybe told as a child, treat others how.
Yes.
How
You'd like to be treated.
You'd like to be treated, right?
Yeah.
Great rule. Gets you really far. Even better rule. Treat others how they like to be treated, right?
Oh, yeah.
And the only way to do that is ask them.
Yeah.
Literally, because if you start applying your own standards, somebody might not quite like the same things as you or the way you do it. You might like short emails, they like long emails. They might like. They might like this gift as opposed to, so just find out from them.
Yeah.
Don't be afraid, so that you can give them what they love and in the form that they love. Always look for the better way, is if it's just pick up the phone, but also actually start tailoring it and listen.
Absolutely. Do you think some of the kind of I was reading an article recently as well, it was saying emotional intelligence, or to do with kind of your brain forming when you're younger, you aren't sort of properly emotionally intelligent until you hit about 25.
Many people didn't even hear.
I could debate that with a few people as well. But like you were saying, it was interesting you touched on COVID and people, even from toddlers age right up through to university to adults who struggled with that kind of environment. I remember thinking, oh my gosh, I can't see my family, and my family is so important to me, and the Zoom isn't enough. Like I kind of need more than that. But do you think as a result of COVID, now that we're kind of out of that stage, do you think things are improving, or do you think it will take a long time to recover from that? Because as you say, we are seeing differences in...
Hey, look, if you miss a chunk, they've shown a lot of research, usually amongst younger children. If you miss 2 years of critical forming thing, unfortunately, it's very hard to ever catch up. It's just... So what we'll see is, the COVID generations across those years, we're just going to have to accommodate them. Some people will improve, but I'm not sure everyone will pick up all those skills to the same level they might have in a world that COVID hadn't happened. But that's not all doom and gloom, right? Yeah. We need to create the environments, like I say, if they're coming into the workplace, and it affected everybody. But if you had a longer track record of social skills, then you kind of sheltered a lot more. Yeah. But we need to create the space and the opportunity for those people, and not be afraid to go back to basics, right?
Yeah.
One of my clients, we've been training the new joiners from university for the last 4 years.
Yeah.
And the groups coming out of COVID, we had to tack on an extra 2 weeks to cover some of the basic stuff that we would have assumed at university, that the social skills they would have picked up.
Yeah.
So it's that sort of stuff going, look, we can't ignore it. Let's actually lean in and help.
Yeah. Would you say, because I've seen some kind of interesting articles and discussions around considering that that's what the sort of COVID generation have been through, there is a new generation coming through that seem to be more emotionally aware and even more so emotionally intelligent when it comes to kind of expressing feelings or communicating better. Would you agree with that?
In some ways, and everything, like we always say, in modicum, right? If you're too sensitive, then you're going to have another range of challenges.
Yeah.
And I think what people always complain about the new generation. It's not saying every generation has moaned about the next generation. It's just they find a different reason, and actually some of the themes are very common.
Yeah.
They do say things like they're too sensitive. I think that's what's equated with the snowflake generator, whatever. But it's not about sensitive.
No.
They've had a series of inputs, and they haven't also not had the opportunity to, for realistic expectations. So it will adapt over time.
Yeah, absolutely. So when it comes to generational trends, this kind of segues us on to this or that.
Okay.
What do you prefer?
Oh God, what a dinosaur I am.
Are you an iPhone person or a Samsung person?
I'm a Samsung person.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Spotify or Apple when it comes to
Spotify.
music? Yep. And Netflix or cinema?
Probably Netflix nowadays, but I do love a good cinema.
Yeah, you can't beat it. And laptops or tablets?
Laptop still.
Yeah. And ChatGPT or virtual reality?
ChatGPT.
Yeah. And video calls or voice notes?
Voice notes.
Interesting.
I use them a lot.
Yeah. And finally, if you could bring back one piece of tech that's either now evolved as a tool or it doesn't exist anymore, what would it be and why?
If I bring back one piece of tech, I think it'd just be for nostalgia. Those things. My Commodore 64 as a kid,
nice.
Many an hour wasted on that. I mean, invested. I'm thinking back to all the mini disc player that I thought was super cool. This is going to be the technology. So there's lots of, tech tools. It's like music.
Yeah.
They just evoke memories.
Yeah.
More than the actual tech. I don't think anyone is actively missing these but they do miss the memories of the formative years.
Oh, absolutely. That's a lovely note to end this week's episode on. Faris, thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you very much.